Good afternoon and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Wednesday, which means I am joined by the leggy that is leggy, the legend, the leggy. Are you leggy, John? The legend. What a start! This is still coming off of the high of last night. The leggy legend that is John Hughes. And the legend that is Patrick McGill as well. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. I can't believe I started off by calling John Hughes leggy. That's one I'm never going to hear the end of. I might actually block the comments from now on, just in case. Just in case.
There are many descriptions of me. That's never been one of them.
That's not one, but we never see your legs, John, and that's not a challenge,
that's
by the way.
That's true.
We never see you. We never see your legs. We never see your legs, but that's all good. Thanks to everybody that's joining us today. I imagine pretty much everybody will be in really good spirits. Let's leave world events to the one side at the moment and just be grateful for the fact that we've got Celtic in our lives. And so not just Celtic, but Celtic in Europe. John, I left you hanging a wee bit last week, mate. So I'm going to bring you in first. Hope that's okay, Patrick. Otherwise, I'll get pelters for John again for making him wait to come. But John, I mean, there's only one place to start, really. That performance last night. For me, I've been fortunate enough to see some great nights in Europe over the past 20 or so years, but they have been few and far between. And over the long periods where we haven't had a great deal to celebrate in Europe, certainly not since the heyday days of Seville in my lifetime, and obviously the great Lisbon days prior to that. But last night felt like there was something special. It was one of those nights I think we won't forget. What did you make of it?
Well, relatively speaking, I mean, we've had great results with the Barca, but I mean, that was essentially a miracle. It's 11% possession. And we managed to pull it off against all the odds. We had some great performances on the way to Seville. But in terms of dominating a team that sits second in the Bundesliga, I certainly don't remember seeing anything like that. My memory's not the best, but I don't remember that feeling of just sitting there going, good God, they can't get the ball off us. I mean, we are literally, the one thing that was missing from last night was the fans having the confidence to go, ole, ole, every time we made a pass. Because, I mean, and it genuinely is, that was because of the lack of confidence. Nobody thought it was going to end up that way. Now, fair play. I ran a poll beforehand, said, I want to see a 4-5-1, I want to see an Atlanta performance, and I just want to see if we can nick a goal. That's not what happened. So my two options were like keep it tight or play them off the park. 19% of people said play them off the park, and those 19% of people are prophets in their own land. So that was remarkable, absolutely remarkable. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think every single person I've spoken to this morning is still absolutely buzzing out their minds. Yeah. I mean, I phoned people I never phone at night. Was
that you, John? Was that
you? Yeah, but and that's despite the restraining orders. I phoned them anyway. No, it was a very, very, very good evening. It was fantastic, an evening to be shared with friends and family. It was just unbelievable. And the problem is trying to come on a platform like this and add some insight, because I don't really feel as if I have any insight beyond elation. I tried to watch the game back later on, but the recording again didn't work properly. So I was just watching the highlights. But I mean, it was breathtaking. There's some of the play points, just the sort of triangles or the rest of it. I mean, for the Kuhn's second goal, the press we embarrassed them in that corner. It just absolutely embarrassed him in that corner, and it just very calmly walked in, calmly stroked across the front of the goal. It's a tap in for Kuhn. And good job for Kuhn, because he hardly did anything else the rest of the night. What was saying. And by the way, I don't know what you would call that, Kuhn, because it's not an improvement from last season. I wouldn't even say it's more of a transformation. I think he has transcended whatever he was before, and he's now manifested in physical form as a German Messi. It's just you know, it's not that I'm prone to hyperbole or anything, but it was just absolutely amazing, and it wasn't his world day that was the thing. It was the way that we played the game. We were so impressive in every single facet, from the defence to the midfield. Just there was nobody that came out of there with, like, you'd have been lucky if we had an 8 out of 10. It was 9 out of 10s and 10 out of 10s all round. It was just sensational. And you know, Kev Graham made the point that that's what we were supposed to do in Atalanta. They just pushed us back into a 4-5-1. 4-5-1 wasn't necessarily the way we were supposed to be playing. And obviously, the way we played last night, we didn't make any attempt to set up a sort of defensive formation. But, oh my God, the pressing was... I mean, those boys, I don't know how they'll be fit for the weekend. You know, the amount of effort. I mean, you saw Hatate keeling over at the end. You know, it just lying there, just going, I can't do this. You know, it was incredible. I mean, I'm sure Patrick wants to say we'll come down to sort of individual performances, but wow, one of my best ever evenings as a Celtic supporter.
Yeah, no, I couldn't disagree. I mean, watching it when the first goal goes in for Leipzig, immediately you start to get that sinking feeling. And I think for a short period, you're kind of wondering, okay, how are we going to respond to this? Are we going to kind of collapse here? And I think, you know, we were definitely rattled for about a 5 to 10 minute period. But what I loved, and there was one moment that I thought exemplified how the rest of the game went, and it was actually Hatate, a player who, you know, can be quite divisive at the best of times. But he picks the ball up with his back to goal, and he turns and he drives the ball forward. And he's got the confidence to go and start building the play. And for me, it looked like, this was just my perspective, but it looked like a bit of a catalyst for saying, actually, hang on, we've cut them open a few times in the first 20 odd minutes before this has happened. We've got this. And I thought that one moment kind of exemplified how the rest of the team played throughout the duration of the match. But yeah, I mean, I can't remember, Patrick, a game in Europe where we've had strong performances, where we've had such strong performances from the goalkeeper right through to the last substitute throughout the game. I mean, there was nobody in that team that made an appearance who I could give negative points or negative marks to. And bear in mind, this is a game where we brought on Yang, one of the most maligned players of this season. I mean, what did you make of the individual performances on the park? And if you can pick out some players that really stood out amongst that performance, who would you pick?
I think the obvious two are the two that you've mentioned already, Hatate and Kuhn. Hatate, as you say, just ran himself into the ground. I'd be really interested to see what his stats were in terms of how many metres he covered, or how many kilometres he covered even, because he didn't stop running all night, played the full 90. Gets his reward with obviously the team winning and his goal in the 72nd minute, but if it wasn't for Kuhn's 2 goals, I think he'd have been man of the match. But I mean, you really could give it to anyone. I thought the centre half pairing was outstanding.
Yes.
I think Trusty must have needed a bit of a confidence boost. I mean, when you ship 104 goals playing for Sheffield United, I suppose you would need a confidence boost. But ever since Atalanta, his first clean sheet, I could be wrong. I don't think we've conceded a goal since then, have we? Because since that clean sheet,
I can't think of any. Yeah, I can't think of anything since Atalanta, no.
Motherwell, Dundee, Aberdeen, and then tonight. So just needed that confidence boost, get the clean sheet under his belt. Now he's playing with Carter Vickers most weeks, and then even when Scales comes on, he looks fairly comfortable, and he's really kicked on since Atalanta 2 weeks ago. McGregor, his usual self. I think out of 80 attempted passes, he only misplaced 3 or something like that. Just an absolutely...
I don't know, you think that was his usual self, Patrick? I thought that was another level from McGregor.
I thought I was going to say, yeah.
You know, I mean, I thought he had control of that game in an unbelievable way, and his calmness and composure in tight spots was just sensational.
I suppose usual in the sense that he was consistent. He was performing at a really top level. But no, you're right. Actually, he played out of his skin, and it really is hard to fault anyone. I mean, there were players who were more perfect than others, I suppose, is the best way you can put it. And I agree with the both of you. I don't want to emphasise my youth any more than I already do, but obviously you can remember more European seasons than I can. I can only sort of go back 10, 11 years to sort of Lennon and Dyla, and it is by far and away, certainly in terms of performance against a top team, by far and away the best European game I've seen. It's probably already the most impressive European campaign I've seen. I think if we didn't go through to the top 24 from this position, it would be a statistical anomaly. With Bruges and Young Boys, I'm sure we're going to talk about it, but with Bruges and Young Boys at home, there's a real chance to get, in my opinion, 13 points. We're on 7 now. We can get 13 points. And I believe on 13 points, you're quite likely to finish top 16 and therefore seeded for the playoff. Getting ahead of myself a wee bit here, but seeded for the playoff game.
Yourself? How are you getting ahead of yourself? Yeah, hang on. I can't believe you're being so defeatist. What happened to our top 8 spot?
Yeah, John's already got his ticket for the final at the moment.
I was going to say, we all booked up for Munich. I got a hotel last night. I got a really good deal.
Absolutely, yeah. Acsom road trip, I think. We need to talk to Paul John, see if we've got budget for it, and get out there, do the show from the stadium. But I think the one thing I would always emphasise, and particularly maybe this is where mine and John's age does come into it. We can't take it for granted. I would always urge everybody that watched the game last night to enjoy it and appreciate it for what it was. But I think if you are looking at what our potential is in this tournament, we are looking really strong at home at the moment, right? And some people might look at Dortmund and say, well, that was such an anomaly, right? But we have to put Dortmund to bed. Dortmund on the night were on another level. I don't think we played at the level we could play at. And I think we've learned from it and we're adapting it. That doesn't mean that we won't necessarily be on the end of another defeat, but there is evidence that this team under the manager in Europe is learning, is adapting, is finding a formula that's actually it's really paying off dividends here, and I think it's fantastic to be part of. Next 2 games, Bruges Young Boys at Parkhead. I mean, I don't care who's coming to Parkhead. I would back this team the way they're currently playing to put in a performance that, at the very least, gains us a really respectable draw. But you know what? As John says, the hell with the defeatist attitude on that. I think we can go there and beat all comers to get to that stage. Now, nobody's being unrealistic. We're not at the point where we're going to go on and necessarily get to the finals, even though we would love to see it, and anything's possible. But what this is representing for me this season, and something we've been asking for a long time, John, is this is meaningful progress in Europe. And this is the evidence of what happens when you have a manager who gets the investment, gets the backing that he needs from his club, and is able to start building quality on top of quality.
Yeah, well, this is well beyond what we were talking about as meaningful progress. We were talking about trying to win a couple of games, and then we got the draw, and to be fair, the draw was very kind. And at this stage, I believe that pretty much the entire Celtic support optimistically hoped we would have a couple of points.
Yeah,
I don't think I didn't hear anyone suggesting this scenario. I mean, this is outrageous. So, I think it's well beyond. And the beauty of this is, if we finish, potentially we could, as high up as we could, you get, just for finishing in 13th, never mind wins and draws and all that, you get about £6.6 million.
Yes.
You start to get, the closer you get to the top of that, it is sensational money. It's for us, it's completely money that differentiates us for generations in terms of our league, etc. So it's a massive, massive difference, and it just. If we can maintain that, so look, we have to take advantage now. It would be a huge disappointment with the team that we have and the fixtures that we have if we did not make a massive dent in this competition now this year, having done this groundwork, having bounced back from an absolute spanking. got a brilliant result away from home, get a sensational result at home, having already had a great result at home, but not against who you'd call top tier opposition. But I mean, still, we have to make inroads into this, because every place, every game, the amount of money you're talking about sets us up for a long, long time. And we're going to need that money, because now we become a target for the guys who thought, I made a terrible mistake at the start. I should have said, Palmer was sensational all night last night. And he scored a very good goal. And, for anyone who's doing scouting reports, Palmer was sensational. We can all agree on that. And he's definitely not worth 25, 30 million. Definitely not worth coming in for. That's what happens, though. Because if we have the level of success we are seeking to have here, we are going to have guys picked off. We are going to have guys picked off in the summer, because we can't resist. We can't resist as a club that sort of money. So we have to be in this constant cycle of making the most of it every time. We cannot underperform, because we need our guys to perform, to set up the next sort of tranche of spending to find their replacements. And this is what we've been talking about all along, though. I don't consider that to be some sort of a problem. I consider that to be, the epitome of what we've been asking for all this time. All this time. And, we asked the board for vision, and we asked them to back the manager. The manager got what he wanted to a large degree. He's just demonstrated what we can do with that. The frustrations of the last 10 years or so, even since 2012, the utter frustration of, knowingly underperforming, having shocking recruitment windows, because you're just not putting effort into it. You're always taking the cheap option, never realistically investing. And, and what was picked up, as we said before, in the accounts was, we were... we weren't competitive in Europe. We were basically just there. That's what they were essentially saying. So we were in Europe, and that was it. But we weren't competitive, and that was the sort of attitude that we had to overcome. And whether it's a moment in time, now, whether it's just the fates conspire to give us a good draw and a good CEO and a good manager who briefly came together and made a good decision based on the fact we've got tons of money in the bank. Hopefully now, this discredits the Lowell ball movement forever. Hopefully now, after this season, we see where our future lies, and our future for us as a club, and for our ambitions and for our aspirations, our future lies in Europe.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to come to that and talk about some of your thoughts around how we maximise our potential in Europe. But before we do that, I just want to talk a couple of points that were raised before the match last night, Patrick, some around team selection. So I think a lot of us expected to see Alex Valle come in. Alex Valle, apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong, but expected to see him come in for the left-hand side. But actually the manager opted for Greg Taylor. That got quite a bit of discussion, because Valle's obviously been playing very, very well. Certainly it seemed to pay dividends. I don't think anyone would accuse Taylor of having a bad game last night. What did you make of that selection? And do you see... There's been a lot of talk about Valle possibly coming in, cementing that place, or maybe another signing coming in if we don't get the chance to retain Valle. I know there's been some speculation around that. What were your thoughts about that decision? How do you think Greg Taylor, who's been a little bit, again, maligned at times this season, how do you think he performed?
Well, as I said earlier, he wasn't as perfect as some others, but I mean, he still had a pretty good game. We only conceded from a corner. So in terms of open play, we obviously defended quite well, limited them to, certainly in the second half, very few chances. I mean, I think I remember maybe 2 or 3 headers. I think a few minutes before Hatate's goal, they chested it down in the box, and it was a sort of near post save by Schmeichel. So, we played really well. We had the better chances, we had more chances. So it's hard to fault any defender. you know, Valle, he's started the last couple of games. He's still a young player. Obviously not a first teamer for Barcelona. If he's coming into the Celtic side in October, November, he's not a proper pre-season. So I wasn't too surprised that he was switched out. Taylor, obviously, very good player. Has been coming on as a sub recently, so it's maybe just about managing fitness more than anything else. And I think you've seen that with Carter Vickers. 15, 20 minutes to go, we switched a defender out in the middle of a European game, which I thought was a bit of a risk, but I mean, it certainly did pay off. So I wasn't too surprised. I mean, long term, that is, as it has been for 5 years, a bit of a concern, that position, because I think for a long time, a lot of people have thought, including myself, that it was maybe one of the easier positions to upgrade. And I still do believe that. I still think we're capable of maybe signing a better player. But now we're in a situation where, for whatever reason, whatever party is holding it up, Taylor's only got 6, 7 months left. And obviously Valle's loan will run out at the same time. I know there was rumours last night, but I really do think we'll sign Valle. I think they've only given him a year's extension to get a fee for him, so I think we'll end up with him. What happens with Taylor, I don't know. I think we can get better, but I wouldn't be gutted at all if he was to sign an extension. I think he's a great player. So individually,
Can I just add there? Sorry,
well,
Patrick. Yeah. Is it just me? By great player, and this is obviously ridiculous coming from me. Someone give that boy a pie. Do you know what I mean? He looks like he's just been released from prison. Do you know what I mean? He is gaunt, and every time he comes on, someone knocks him off the ball. Until he gets, and he really does need to bulk up. In all seriousness, he needs to bulk up. He needs to get some mass.
He does have a bit of height on him as well, so I think just adding a little bit of mass on there might help. But he's young as well, so obviously maybe still developing. To be honest, I could do with maybe having a little bit of what Bay's got these days. I'm getting that mid-lead spread going. Yeah, no, I think I agree. I mean, I think it'll be interesting to monitor the situation with Taylor, because he's been a huge part of a lot of our sustained success, particularly domestically, in recent years. But I think what's been nice with situations like Trusty, Scales and Carter Vickers on the left-hand side, we've got Valle at the moment, albeit for however long, and Taylor, an established first-team player. On the other side, we've got AJ, Ralston, maybe a slightly weaker alternative at the moment. And I, like a lot of supporters, I love the guy, I love his attitude, love what he represents. But I, wondering if the gap's starting to increase in terms of the level of quality. But what we have had, John, is we now have quality and depth, something we have been crying out for, and I think in some of these key positions, so it's great. I want to bring in a couple of comments before I jump to the next point, because keen to get people's thoughts on last night. Now the dust has settled a little bit, but to be honest, I think the emotion is still there. Craig Hanratty, I think that is, has come in and said, we looked like a proper European team last night. Yep, absolutely. I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that we actually look like we belong. Now, we don't look like we're just there to make up the numbers. We are there and we're competing. Barry O'Sullivan, got to be at least 5 changes to the first team for Sunday. Yep, we've got the match against Kilmarnock coming up, and it's in Kilmarnock on that dreaded pitch that we all hate. So I think, given combination of tired legs and protecting our players for the upcoming games, I think that's probably a reasonable shout. Although, again, we've spoken about not upsetting the Malins too much, so it'll be interesting to see what the manager does. Tony Ratton comes in, welcome to the channel. Magnificent display from all the Celtic team last night, including the subs. Brendan showed us astute coaching too. The result sends out a statement. Let's maintain this quality. I think that supports what you said, John. And Joe, regular to the channel, welcome Joe. Good afternoon, troops. Absolutely buzzing and so proud of the team, the manager and the best fans in the world. That tifo, respect. Yeah, absolutely. We spoke about the tifo before coming on live, and every time you look at it just gets more and more impressive. Really, really good.
I just say to Joe there, Joe, I'm expecting you to send me through a song about this later on, by the way. Joe's a wee bit of a very good musician. And he comes up with some good Celtic stuff, yeah. So I'm expecting the Leipzig song later on, Joe.
Yeah, challenge set out there, Joe. So it'll be up to you, mate. I'll see if he comes back on the comments. Just the last one here. Stephen Mitzi came in and said the press was immense, which I'm assuming he's not talking about the media there, but actually more we played in the.
I tell you what, I did see in the comments here twice people saying that Baye was potentially getting recalled by Barca.
That's the rumours that I've heard. So I don't know how much truth there is. I can't validate the rumours. I think to do with potential injury crisis at Barcelona, but I've not seen anything concrete on that. So it'll be an interesting one to watch. I think even if that was to happen, I think what it has provided us with by having Baye is that there are players of the requisite quality out there that we can get, whether it be on loan to buy, or eventual purchase. And look, even if Baye was to go and become a little bit like I think it was Beck at Liverpool last season. He was recalled, comes on for a 10-minute appearance and then doesn't play again.
Yeah.
We now know what Baye offers, so it's not to say that he wouldn't become available again. But it would be a shame if we lost him for this season. So I would agree on that.
Can I
John,
just say, sorry, the one thing before that, the reason. Now, people have been watching this since the start will remember this way back. It was one of my very first appearances, and I'd done a bit of research into. We were playing Red Bull at that time as well, and I'd done a bit of research into them. And essentially, their sporting director was the former East German director of the national drug doping program. So this guy was doping children. This guy was, as well as adults, in a state way in terms of they didn't really have a choice in the matter. If you wanted to have any sort of life, you were forced into this. And this is a guy that was pumping you full of drugs. And he'd obviously since then he'd even been prosecuted for another drugs offence. And this was a guy that Red Bull chose as their sporting director that had responsibility for both the Red Bull teams and all the Red Bull athletics. This is the guy they decided to put in charge. So hell mend them. The more we beat them by, the better. And if as far as I'm concerned, the Red Bull can get relegated. I have no time for people like that who are taking on. I mean, it's not just that he was given. It was a national. A lot of people might not be old enough to remember really what communism was like and what the East German state was like and all the rest of it. And the people, the people that they were sending out there, absolutely loaded with steroids, and ruined their lives basically because all they were getting for it was a wee apartment and a few decent food. This is a guy that was doing it to children as well, and so hell me and Red Bull, I've got no love for them at all.
No complaint
on
on
Red Bull last night. That result effectively puts them out. I mean, they've got Inter Milan, Aston Villa, and Sporting Lisbon, and then I think they've got Sturm Graz, which I mean they'll probably win that game, but they're effectively out of the Champions League, which was another Brucey bonus from last night, I suppose.
Think about that. Also, the other thing we didn't touch on really was they had to win. They did not come here to sit back. They didn't come here to take it easy. They didn't come here because they had a more important game coming up and they'd replaced a couple of guys. They 100% had to win that game, and we bodied them about the place. It was fabulous.
Yeah, it was no indication of a free hit there or them taking it easy last night. No, I think we deserve all the credit in the world. To your point there on the Red Bull official that Saldamia, John, I remember all the doping scandals as well as everything related to the Eastern Bloc and the history, which was incredibly tragic. We're still seeing repercussions about it today. And actually, when you look back at that, it makes you even more surprised and galled at the way the world's turning out at the moment. But anyway, I'm sure we'll have time for a bit of a rant on that. Should we get it? John, I just wanted to tell your thoughts. You had made a great point prior to coming on to the pod today around how we try and build on our European progress and make that a priority. And you had some interesting thoughts about the League Cup, so I'm going to hand over to you.
It's just, and I would just ask folk in the comments and, the folk listening to us later, to have a wee think about this, not just knee-jerk reaction, right? Now, we have asked the board to show vision, and we have asked, I in the summer, I said the reason we had to show that vision was because I didn't think Rangers were going to be a threat. And I think things could fall away domestically. So we need to have a different idea of what it is Celtic fans are coming to see. And, how you're going to keep people coming to the ground, and keep their interest. And this is why I absolutely 100% believe that our future is in Europe, because ultimately things in Europe will change down the road, and we need to be at that table when those things change. But, you know, we need to adjust our own expectations, I think, as part of that vision. We need to be looking at Europe, and that last night was a perfect opportunity. You know, so domestic trebles, for instance, have always been important because we weren't achieving anything in Europe. You know, we'd go in, we'd be out with Christmas, the usual embarrassing sort of fare, and so then you were really, really focused on the domestic trebles. But you take, for instance, that game on Saturday. The winners of that game against Aberdeen go on to potentially win a competition that's worth 300 grand. That game we played last night was worth £1.8 million, right, for that win, and 600 grand for the draw. And we potentially risk all of that on a game that effectively doesn't matter. The League Cup, for me, needs to go the way, as far as we're concerned, I'm not saying the rest of the league, all major European leagues have downgraded the League Cup in a competition like that to where you play your reserves, to where you play your fringe players, to give them time. We keep saying we can't give these guys time. We can give them time if we take Europe seriously, because they could win us the first competition of the year. You know, does it really matter if we beat Aberdeen 6-0? Can we not beat them 1-0 and make sure that Kuhn's not injured? Make sure that CCV can play 90 minutes? Do you know what I mean? You know, why would you risk that for a game that ultimately doesn't matter? But the manager knows that we haven't made that leap yet as a fan base. We haven't changed yet as a fan base because we haven't seen the real proof. So this season, maybe the proof is what's coming down the pike. You know, I don't care if Rangers or Aberdeen win that trophy, and if we're performing in Europe to the extent that we are at the moment. If we're doing stuff like this, if this is our benchmark now, you know, I don't care if they win the wee trophy any more than I would care if they win the Harry Ramsden's Cup. Yeah. You know, so it's just, you know, just as I said earlier, just for achieving 13th place, you get another 6.6 million. Yeah. So I think we need to make the shift as a fan base and start believing. You know, it's the same reason psychologically, it's the same reason we weren't going, ole, last night when we were passing the ball around, because we're not really believing it yet, right? Now, we could win the League Cup with our reserves and with our youth. And if we can't, we can't. But we should not be risking any play, especially in that time frame, ridiculous time frame from Saturday to Tuesday. And the reason why, you know, it probably worked out all right for us is because nobody got injured. They had a tough game at the weekend and they had to travel. But imagine that hadn't been the case. Why would you jeopardise it? Why would you take the risk? It doesn't make sense when you look at it objectively. It just doesn't make sense. And I think we need to change our opinions about what matters and what it is as fans that we expect. You want to do well in every, you know, competition that you're in, but not all competitions are created equal. Let's be honest. If there was a charity shield, the equivalent of a charity shield, you know, every year, how much would you care if you won it? You know, it's for Rangers to total up all the Diddy Cups that they've won, you know, and try and put them in because they're the most successful team in the world, you know. So that is not us. That doesn't matter. That cannot be our vision. We cannot be that narrow-minded. We must prioritise. And that, I thought, at the weekend, I really, really enjoyed the game. Everyone enjoyed it. The 6-0, it was brilliant. Really great fun, but it was totally unnecessary. It was a massive risk, and it was unnecessary. I just don't think we should be doing that. And I know there's going to be pushback on it. I tweeted about it. There was pushback. But I think we have to change our mindset. What do you reckon?
Yeah. I think there's two schools of thought. I think there's a lot of merit in it. I mean, as just a pure supporter, I want to see us playing our top team every single game and winning every game and winning it comfortably and cheering and having the Ole football, as you say. I mean, that's me with absolute, just my heart rolling over my head. You know, so I can absolutely empathise with the comments who are kind of, no, we should prioritise every competition and we should always try and win. But we have to be realistic. This is the converse. And this is again just my view, so I'll take the hits on the comments as well as yourself, John. But my other school of thought, which is my head rolling over my heart a little bit, is that while I want to win every competition, we are in a domestic league which doesn't have the rewards of, say, an FA Cup or an English League Cup or some of the cup competitions in Europe. And even over the years, when you look at those much more financially lucrative competitions, managers like Alex Ferguson, going back away on Jose Mourinho and various others, would play what is the equivalent of reserve teams in those competitions, particularly in the early stages of those competitions. Sometimes they would get caught out and they would lose games, but for the majority of time, they would get through and they would win. It wouldn't be until they got to the later stages that you'd start to see some of the top players coming in. Honestly, I don't know what the best thing to do is, because, as I say, from a supporter standpoint, I would like to see us, winning every game. But I also recognise the B team doesn't have the benefits of, say, a reserve league or exposure to playing in top tier football, which the League Cup, particularly in its later stages, offers. So there would have to be a balance between managing the squad with a focus on what our top priority is in that season. If our top priority is European competition, so not just sustaining the performances we're in just now, but actually, trying to build on that. And when you're not really necessarily getting the support from your football association, I mean, having a game, at that time on a Saturday with a game on Tuesday, where's the support from our association for the benefit of Scottish football, which we represent? Then I think you have to make some hard decisions. And that game, there were a few hard challenges went in at the weekend against Aberdeen, and at one point I thought, God, we'd be lucky if we go into the Leipzig game with a full squad. So I'm a little bit torn on it. I'm a little bit torn, if I'm honest. I can see arguments for both, but I do think that it's a consideration if we want to meet our primary objectives as a football club. There is a practical element to it, but as a supporter, it's very difficult for me to say, don't play your top team against, what certainly in the game of the weekend was your top opposition this season so far domestically. But you're right. I mean, there's a lot of different factors. The financial element, there's the fitness element, there's the exposure to first team football for maybe some of the fringe players. I wouldn't necessarily go for youngsters, but I would say fringe players, your Odin Holmes and Yangs and Thomas, players like that. Yeah, definitely I think it merits debate. Patrick, interested to get your thoughts on it. It's for balance.
Totally support the idea. I thought I spoke about it going into the new format. This new format was originally conceived as a 10-game league phase. And when I first heard that, my first thought was, well, we're going to have to get rid of the League Cup then, because that is far too many games. In the modern day, footballers already play too many games. But, I mean, it was originally 10. It's been shortened to 8, which I think was the right decision. But with this format, with the money that's in European football, I think it probably is a matter of time. I'm just not sure who pushes it. Because as you're saying, supporters are divided on this. It's sometimes referred to as the Mickey Mouse Cup, and none of us, we all enjoy Celtic winning trophies, we all enjoy Celtic winning trebles, and it's really the only thing it's good for, in my opinion, because we don't get the money. And as you've seen last season with Rangers, they won the League Cup and only the League Cup, and it was a disappointing season for them. It's for the top two teams, it's nothing on its own. And going forward, the future is in Europe. There's no money in this competition. So I would wholeheartedly support either not competing in it or just putting your youth team in it, like the way the Glasgow Cup went 20, 30 years ago, or maybe even 40 years ago. It becomes effectively a youth competition or a reserve league competition for teams who are competing in Europe. In terms of who drives this, in 2 or 3 years, we are there was a discussion last week, and I think, John, you put a poll out, and there was a poll in the Acsom chat as well about would you prefer to see another liquidation event or sort of 25 years of prolonged purgatory for our Glasgow rivals? Now, if there is a prolonged period of purgatory and we continue to play to this level in the Champions League, I think it's very likely that fans might start to drive this, because the sort of worry about, oh, we need to stop Rangers winning a trophy. You know, we don't really want to win it ourselves apart from completing a treble set, but to stop Rangers winning it. But I mean, if the competition becomes so minor, and if they as a club continue to become so minor, you might see fans sort of care about it less and less. In terms of the club, you know, I am one of tens of thousands of people on the home cup ticket scheme who paid £25 for both of the home games in the League Cup. So in terms of prize money, it is only worth a couple of 100,000. But in this season, I don't doubt Celtic made, you know, a couple of 100 grand from ticket sales in the League Cup. So I don't think Celtic will be the ones driving it. Maybe 5, 10 years down the line, if we continue to progress in Europe, if they decide to eventually expand this, as I think we've discussed, UEFA are probably going to, it's going to become 8 games, and then 10 games, and then 12 games. It's a way of sort of nullifying the Super League by essentially becoming the Super League. So I think in 5, 10 years' time, it probably is inevitable, just the way that football's going, as long as we're on the right side of, you know, European football and we don't get left behind. That would be the real worry. But I just want to, I know John's covered it, but I just want to come back and say, you know, not to go over old ground and stuff, but in terms of the Lawwell thing, you know, what we're experiencing right now is something that we could have quite easily done 10 years ago. We could have went out and guaranteed our Champions League place by spending Champions League money to buy Champions League players. The difference being, you know, we've arguably achieved more in Europe than Peter Lawwell did in his last 10 seasons as CEO, under just 3 with Michael Nicholson. We've got a top manager, we're reinvesting money back into the squad, and we're showing a bit of ambition, and we're trusting the manager. You know, in 12-13, we had a really good Champions League campaign under Lennon with Barcelona, and we chose to play it safe. We sold a bunch of key players, Wanyama, Hooper. The following season, Ledley and Forster went, and we didn't replace them, and we went and got a cheap manager in Ronnie Dyla. So again, not to go over old ground, but if you sign a top manager and you sign players at the peak of what you can sign them, as opposed to going for bargain buys, it shows that you can actually compete at this level, and it is worth the risk.
Absolutely.
And as pointed out, sorry, Patrick, carry on.
Just to go back to the League Cup, I think it probably is inevitable that this gets sort of consigned to history in terms of for Celtic anyway. Because I mean, if you look at other countries, even I think it's only Portugal and England that have a League Cup. Other teams have sort of Community Shields and sort of National Cup playoffs in August and stuff like that. But yeah, I think the League Cup is soon to be a thing of the past for us.
But I mean, you know, that's it. I mean, I looked at you know, my dad, Glasgow Cup medals, and I still see Glasgow Cup medals going up for, and that was important of its time. But things change. People saying there that, for instance, Europe wasn't as important when we won it in 1967. That's true, but things change. You know, we're in a completely different world now. There's no point in comparing apples with oranges, especially some oranges. So, you know, we need to be realistic about the situation that we're in.
Yeah.
You know, it's not that, you know, I don't want to win the League Cup. While it exists, I want to win it. I don't want to let Rangers win it. That's not the case. What I'm saying is we have players that we need to get game time. And it would be a massive boost for them and a real test against, you know, domestic opposition to see, you know, if they can produce the goods.
Absolutely.
You know, how many times have we sat in this show and go, when is that boy ever going to get minutes? How's he ever going to prove himself? You know, he's going to get 5 minutes and then he's going to be punted on. And then when we punt people on, people are going, he never get a chance. Give them the chance. When it's not even, you know, it's like 4 games. And quite frankly, look, if the games were, if they were important for fitness or anything like that, you know, and we had plenty of time between fixtures, you know, you can still play the first team if you want to. But Not in a 3-day turnaround, you can't, or you shouldn't. There's too much risk of injury, and there's too much money at stake, and there's too much progress at stake. And it's not just about the money as it goes to the cups, it's about what we're trying to achieve, because it is a business after all. And we will have our top players poached, and we have to have the money to, consistently go and replace them. We cannot just be, I think, look, this is one season. I don't think anyone's going to change their mind on this, maybe until, we've done Europe for a couple of seasons. And
no, of course. So
I know that, it's asking a lot just now, but I think, we need to start looking at what our priorities are, and we need to start having the kind of vision that we're asking other people to have, and not demanding, because ultimately we've got a very good sort of 13, 14 players. We don't have a very good 26 players, so you're asking an awful lot of those guys, and they already play too much, as Patrick was saying. So, it's I think the massive advantage, basically, you think of, when you come to athletes, I think of Irish rugby and the massive, how they've been able to do so well in World Rugby is because their main players don't play all the games. They'll go into massive games having not played for a couple of weeks. They've been rested, they've been cosseted, they've been on the masseuse table, they've been getting physio, and they've been getting to peak performance. They peak for every game. I'm not suggesting that we can do that, but essentially, that's the kind of thing you'd be looking for. We need to be at peak for every game, not coming into a game tired, not coming into a game carrying a sore ankle or an injury. You know what I mean? So it's not possible to completely wipe that out, obviously, but we can manage things an awful lot better than we are at the moment.
Yeah. I just want to bring up a couple of comments on this, because as you can imagine, John, it's getting quite a bit of debate in the chat. But I think there's good points here, balancing on both sides. So I'm going to bring the first one up, which is Mintus Toboggan, who's a regular commenter, and welcome to the live show. What was the prize money in 1967? In fact, the cup final at Hampden with 120,000 plus crowd probably made us more money than winning the big cup. So by John's logic, we should have prioritised domestic trophies. John, I'll give you the opportunity to respond to that in a second. But again, on the other side, Kaiser comes in and says, what Big John's saying is facts. We need to establish a plethora for our top players. Is that not one of the Claxon words, plethora? Is that not one of Paul John's favourites? But a plethora for our players, a top level, and also provide our young players an opportunity to build to that level in domestic cup. Again, you come in with the supporters' view from Love It. Sorry, for me, fans pay top money to watch top players. I kind of subscribe to that to an extent. If watching our second team should pay less money for games,
they should pay less money. They should pay less money.
Yep.
That should be a fact.
Absolutely. Stubboy comes in. It's Stubboy. I'm not sure if it's Stubboy or Stubboy. 86, welcome to the channel. Only way we will bring through youth and fringe players is by giving them game time. The League Cup is ideal for this, and it helps us prioritise Europe win-win. Familiar Face comes in, and the players and managers will decide the status of the League Cup. I think, going back to how we go about this. And then just Mantis just come back in. I just think it was quite a pertinent point. If the Champions League expands, and the situation will resolve itself in terms of League Cup, until such times we should be able to win everything we had. And I think to your point, John, you're not looking for immediate change on this, but more with a forward-thinking view to how do we maintain our progression without compromising our success by not factoring in what brings the greatest rewards.
You're not going to get an immediate response on this simply because we can have a sensational year this year, and if we go into Europe next year and it's an absolute bomb scare and something goes horribly wrong, then people will retreat back to why are we not putting everything into this? And as Kev says, it is the managers and the players who will decide. It's actually the manager who will decide, because he'll decide what the fans want more, and he'll decide what's more important for his team, and he'll decide what risks he wants to take. Right now, he couldn't get away with it, I don't think. He could put out a slightly weakened team, but he couldn't get away with putting out like a full-on reserve team. So I think it's something that will happen naturally, and I think it will happen, and I think it has to happen because, I'm not getting carried away. People are saying we're all getting carried away, a couple of good results. I've said since the summer before any of this happened, our future is in Europe. It has to be in Europe because there isn't enough domestic interest. We just beat the second best team in Scotland 6-0. We battered them. So how long do people, and if we go into this League Cup final, for instance, and we beat Rangers by a similar margin, what does that say about the domestic competition? So how many people you think are going to turn up then for a wet Wednesday midweek game against a bottom of the table club? It starts to have an effect, because if there's no competition at the top, which certainly this season I don't think there will be, and I said that in the summer, I think we have to be realistic about where the business is going, where the club is going. We have to be realistic. We can't just knee-jerk react, say, I want to win everything. Of course you do. But, there are things that we have to prioritise. We need to look down the road, see where the game is going, see where our place in this game needs to be. And, again, I think it's probably natural attrition that will take care of it at the end, because the European games will become so important. I certainly hope that's what happens, because if that's not what happens, if we're sitting in this conversation in a couple of years and the League Cup is vital because we're not doing anything else, then we're going to be in serious trouble.
Yeah, and I think to your point, John, I think not only do we need those forward-thinking strategists, if you like, within the clubs, we actually need them at the Football Association as well. We need them to be looking at actually how do we increase the profile of our game. Well, do you know what? We need our teams to be doing well in Europe. We need more teams to be doing something in Europe, and actually how do we support our clubs in doing that. But at the same time, I think it's important that we try and maintain a level of prestige over our domestic competitions and our cups. But yeah, the status quo isn't going to lead to the progression that we need as a football club or as a footballing country, I would say. Anyway, I think that was a great debate. Some really good comments coming in. Appreciate everybody that has a viewpoint. That keep it going, and if we get the chance to respond to some of those going forward as well. Just conscious of time, Patrick, want to talk a little bit about obviously following on from last night's brilliant performance, but one that definitely will have taken it out the legs of a few players. I actually saw Nick Kuhn quite alarmingly with the ice pack under his hamstring when he went off, which is, emphasises some of the points John was making there. We've got a game against Kilmarnock at the weekend. It's at Kilmarnock's grounds, which is always or has historically been a tricky place to go up against a manager who's been a wee bit of a bogey manager in recent seasons, but I think we've a good measure of him since towards the end of the last season. Would you make wholesale changes for the weekend? And if so, who would you see coming in?
No, not wholesale changes. I think that would be quite risky. In terms of fitness, I'm not so concerned. I mean, this was a Tuesday game, so that helps us. And the Kilmarnock game isn't until 3:00 on a Sunday. So in terms of fitness, it shouldn't be that much of an issue. As well as that, just looking at the subs last night, Engels and Taylor came off with 25 minutes to go, so they should be fine. Valley only came on, I say, for 25 minutes. Carter Vickers came off quite early. And guys like McCowan didn't come on at all.
I was a bit surprised at that, actually.
Bernardo only played 25 minutes. Ida only played 9 minutes. He had a fantastic game, absolutely fantastic game at Rugby Park back in May when we clinched the title. Again, you've got players like Forrest, Ralston, less so Palmer. He is not impressed this season at all. But I mean, it's obviously a difficult game based on the 2 or 3 tricky results we got against Kilmarnock last year. But I'm not sure we should be massively concerned about this. Obviously, it's a hard game, but it's not as if we're knackered and we're going to struggle to pick up points. I fully back us to go out and win the game. Just to touch a wee bit back on Aberdeen and the League Cup and things like that. On Twitter we've seen them highlight budgets quite a lot. I'd like them to tell me what the budget of the Leipzig team was, because I'm pretty sure it was higher than Celtic's, and it's not something I've ever heard us talk about in terms of like after Dortmund games, after Champions League games. I don't think anyone's expecting us to compete with Real Madrid, but going to Dortmund, I think the realistic view was, right, we're probably not going to get any points here, but to keep it respectable is totally fine. None of us have ever complained about budgets, in my opinion. So I don't know if any Aberdeen fans have counted up the transfer fees of that Leipzig team that we played last night. Yeah. And then just to, I suppose, touch on domestic affairs, we're talking about exiting the League Cup. We're talking about Kilmarnock on Sunday. I think 3 points should be the least we expect. I think we should still be winning that game, even though we have, ran ourselves into the ground on a Tuesday in Europe. I don't think the gap is. I've ever seen the gap this big. Obviously, 2016, the sort of new club first came up, and we went on an invincible treble. But we are now. I know it's only one game, but we've had a pretty good European campaign so far. We're still dominating domestically, which is something I've never really seen playing in the Champions League. We've really struggled in Europe in the 10, 11 years I've supported Celtic. So I'm not sure that the domestic gap has ever been bigger. Certainly the financial gap has also never been bigger. And just one final point, 88th minute, you had a pitch invader last night. We've had warnings about pyrotechnics and having potential fan lockouts for away games and stuff like that. The wee boy looked, 7 or 8, so I'm not going to blame him, but whoever he was with at the game should be taking a look at themselves, because not only for Celtic is that irresponsible, but I mean, 2 minutes to go, we're trying to see out a very famous win, and I don't know who he was with, but they ought to take a good look at themselves, because that's totally irresponsible.
Yeah, I'd heard that it was I think the young lad's father was having let's just say a fairly animated debate with the stewards. I mean, look, yeah, kids are going to get overtaken with excitement and stuff. We get that, but you're not. I think as parents, you've got to take a responsibility, or as guardians, whoever who's with, let's take a bit of responsibility, because there is a safety issue with that as well. Not just to players and fans. I mean, if I hadn't been a kid that get on, I mean, he'd get well onto the park and, was able to get up and get a hug off Casper Michael. Well, what if someone trying to get on and do a bit of damage, So I think we've got to try and lead by example a wee bit with kids. But, well, we fella will probably be a hero in school today, I would imagine.
I was concerned about criticising it simply because, I thought maybe there's some sort of mental health issue there. And the parents have lost control, and he just turned her back for a minute and he's away.
A lot of unknowns, yeah. So, there's a lot of unknowns. Don't want to make assumptions on it.
I'm hesitant to make any judgments on it, but clearly he shouldn't have been able to go onto the pitch. And clearly, if there aren't any of those issues, his parents should be banned. It should be, that should, if you can't control them, if there are no issues and you just fail to control a child, there's no excuse for that. That's just not good enough.
I'm criticising the parent here, to be fair. You should also be criticising the steward, because we've seen rumours of overcrowding in the standing section, and that is a health and safety concern. And then it feels like this has happened quite a lot over recent years. So there's a question to be asked at stewards at Parkhead as well, in my opinion.
Yeah, quite right. Thank you, Patrick, for bringing up a wonderful memory for me, because that game in May, where
was this why you had a mischievous look on your face a few minutes ago? I was going to bring this in.
Big Ida ran riot. He ran riot that night. Was it 5-1? They absolutely ran riot. That's when he cemented his place, I think, in everyone's heart. That was a crucial game at the time.
It was.
And I was in Xanadu, which was not a, what's her name? Who sang that?
Olivia Newton-John.
Olivia Newton-John. It wasn't Olivia
Newton-John. Sorry, I answered that far too quickly. Sorry.
You did answer it far too quickly.
It's one of my wife's favourite films. Okay, I just want to clarify that. No,
none of us should have known that. One of your wives, are you a Mormon? Where's your apostrophe in that?
I said it was one of my.
So basically, back to the point. I was in a hotel in Turkey on my holidays, and that was a sensational evening for me. And I was listening to it on my headphones on my phone, and the band were very confused about why someone was jumping up and down like a lunatic. But they're just like, God, he really loved that chord progression. So I had a fantastic time. So thank you very much for bringing that back. Back to the drug situation. It was Kuhn on beta blockers last night, because, I mean, if I'd scored that worldie that he scored, he was more animated for the second goal. That was himself.
Very much a man of few words. He was very. I listened to his interview immediately after, and it was just. It was like off the shoulder, no problem. Yeah, just the business as usual kind of attitude, which I kind of like, to be fair.
I went back through his history, and he was there. It was under 17s, under 19s. He was there. So, you know, I think he very much had a point to prove, and I'm surprised he didn't lose his mind after that first goal. I certainly would have done. But, you know, he was pretty happy after the second one. He certainly he proved a point, an important point, because he was completely anonymous against Dortmund, but then again, weren't we all? He come back with a sterling defensive performance against Atalanta. Last night, he just showed his class. He was,
yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
He was sensational and fair play.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought it was also, just last points, we're very much at time, and I want Paul John to shout at me, but there was an interesting point made by Joe Hart on commentary. And I have to say, what an excellent job he's doing.
Great commentary.
Pretty much all his ventures since he left the club. I mean, he's absolutely nailing it. So good on you, Big Joe. But I'm loving the continued association with Celtic and how well he speaks. But he spoke about Kuhn last season. He actually spoke about, obviously, the health issue that he had, which affected his physique, and I think his confidence took a hit as well. But Joe said that one of the techniques, or one of the approaches that the coaching staff and the manager was having, was saying, look, Nick, go out there and show what you can do. Go out and show that you can step up and show what you can do. And I thought that was really interesting to hear that insight, that they obviously recognised that there's a player there, but the player himself had that kind of mental barrier to get through as well. Look at the fruits of the labour that we're seeing now. Absolutely fantastic, and I think he's well on his way to being a hero. And you know what? I know everybody goes on about the number 7 and all the great players that have played number 7 at Celtic. A lot of my childhood heroes played with the number 10, and I've been desperate for us to have someone with that number 10 shirt who you can actually look at and hero worship to an extent. So I'm delighted what Kuhn's doing for the team at the moment. Gents, that's been over an hour. We've been 1,500 strong. Some fantastic debate today. Great to see everybody still buzzing after last night.
Yeah. Okay, sorry, mate. Can I just bring up one comment? That was very harsh, but very funny. Let's say when Palmer comes on, does he not count as a pitch invader?
Oh dear.
Very harsh, very harsh.
Harsh but funny. No, listen. I think it's just great that we've got these nights to look forward to enjoy, and hopefully we'll continue enjoying our success continuing this weekend against Kilmarnock. Patrick, John, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. The hour always goes too fast when you guys are on, but you do make hosting this really easy. Thanks everyone who commented, everybody on the chat. Really appreciate all the support as well. We are now up and over 30,000 supporters for the channel, subscribers for the channel, which is fantastic. Really can't thank everybody enough. I'm trying to do my best Paul John impression here and cover all the bases. We've got 2 big events coming up. We've got John Collins coming up to Bar Live in Glasgow on the 1st of December. Tickets are on sale. And we also have the 80th Centenary boys. We've got Packy Bonner, Roy Aiken, and of course the wonderful Peter Grant, who I'm looking forward to coming up late in December. I think it's December 19th possibly for that one. But the links are under the video. Thanks everyone for joining us today. This is Wednesday, and this has been A Celtic State of Mind. Hail, hail.